Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma231 here, back again today to talk about Oshi chapter number 132. This chapter is titled Nino. And let me tell you, this is a chapter. If that doesn't automatically get my thoughts across on this chapter down, I don't know what will. Just to go and put it out there blatantly, I was not the biggest fan of this Oshi chapter. I feel like it went in a lot of weird directions, treated a lot of characters in very weird ways from what we know their established character arcs to be. I mean, maybe not. Maybe the big Oshi fan over there in the corner may say something different. But me personally, I just found this chapter to be very weird from what I've grown to know and love as Oshi itself. And it didn't really like the chapter too much, right? Granted, yeah, it has a really interesting reveal at the end of the chapter, and all in all, it builds up a new mystery. I'm not going to say mystery. It builds up a new threat in terms of Oshi, but all in all, I didn't really like this chapter all too much, right? But, as always, we've got just 2 things we need to talk about before we get to the chapter. First off is, hey, I do a lot of Oshi chapter reviews on the channel, so if you have listened this far and like it already, 1 minute and like 20 seconds in, go check out the rest of them, because I got plenty more on the channel. And also, what happened last time in Oshi? Well, last time we had a chapter where it was really focused on Mimcho a little bit, and a lot of the characters sort of just getting together while filming the movie. Ruby looked very much like Ai in the costume she was given. And eventually the whole thing at the end of the chapter was, oh, how much of this movie is real? And Akane figured that a lot of it was real. And that's because Aqua went to go see Ai's actual mother, which is his and Ruby's grandmother. And they met her, and we sort of learned about her resentment towards the movie, but how it may be a point of atonement for her is seeing the movie made, right? And that was really the whole big detail. We had a nice moment with Akane and Aqua at the end of this chapter, but going into chapter number 132 now. This chapter starts out like last time, as we see all of the members of Biko Nahachi performing up on a stage, right? And while these are all of the characters we know and love, like Kana, Akane, and Ruby, they're actually not. They're in character. They're filming the movie. Does that make sense? Sure. Thank you. So they're all filming the movie, and as everything's going on, we see that Kana's here, playing as Nino, obviously, and she's just like, I always smile, 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 you're smiling Queen Nino. And she's just going around doing all the idol things. A bunch of people in the crowd are going absolutely wild over this, just like, yeah, Nino-chan, you're so great, we all love you, right? And just doing all of that. But then we see that she looks over to Ai, who's obviously being played by Ruby, and we see that Ai is just dancing gloriously up on the stage, and that there are so many more signs in the crowd that say Ai, and people are cheering even louder, like, Ai, we love you, Ai, oh my goodness, we couldn't go without you, right, we love you, and it's just so big. And eventually, they quit for today, right? They're out of the, I don't know if they're out of the filming process. No, they're not out of the filming process yet, because we see that they're all just sort of standing there, and Nino and Ai are sort of standing around. Ai is laughing with people, talking with them. I actually think that she is meeting fans that were waving Nino signs earlier, right? Sort of just showing that Nino has this insecurity over Ai because, oh, Ai is so much better, and she's stealing to people who are trying to love her, right? So Nino's not really happy about this. And we see the person that Akane is playing, which I actually don't remember their name right now. So I'm sorry, whoever Akane is playing fans. So, but Akane walks up. This is really weird because I'm trying to do it in the old character. I don't know at this point. Akane's character walks over and is like, oh man, geez, you can't really do anything without me, huh? And sort of just like puts a hand on Ruby's face and sort of just like moves it around. And she's just like, hey, keep this up and you'll never get married. Which is a little weird, because isn't that the whole thing in, like, the idol space, is you don't want to get married? Sure, we'll just go with that, right? But we see Nino is sitting back there, Kana's character, and she's just sort of thinking, like, man, you're both so beautiful, so popular, And she's like, don't take what's mine also, right? And as everything's just going on, we just finally see somebody in the corner just like, what was I? Was I really like that in the past? As we see somebody with a kid on their shoulder, right? Or on her chest. She's just like, well, yeah, I've been telling everyone this and that, but I did it out of love, okay? And then this person goes over to the person saying of Steiner's like, hey, Nino, don't just stand there. Come over here, all right? As she walks over, and we understand these are two of the old members of Become Nahachi, right? One of them is Nino, who is who Kana's playing, and the other one is the character who Akane's playing. Which I feel bad because I honestly don't remember her name, and she seems like a cool person, right? But they pretty much just have the whole thing of, man, I can't believe we got such two beautiful young women playing to both of us, right, Nino? And Nino's just like, yeah. And both of them are just like, oh, man, you two are just too kind, right? And at the same time, we see that Mimcho's also here, and she's like, oh my gosh, what an honor. Think that two of the old Become Nahachi members would go out of their way to watch us, right? As the character that Akane is playing, man, I really need to figure out this name for next time, right? She's just like, oh no, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be like a barging in on anything. She's just like, hey, having two old plain ladies barging in like this is probably quite unpleasant, right? But of course, Mimcho, who is a fan of the old Become Nahachi and aspires to be like them, is just like, oh my gosh, no way. And we sort of see that she walks off and talks with them, right? And at this point, we see what Ruby is up to, right? She is standing over in a corner with Aqua, because Aqua is here for some reason, right? As Aqua's just like, hey, don't you want to join them, Ruby? But Ruby's just like, no, I'm good. I already said hi to them, right? And Aqua's like, but I thought you were their fans, right? And Ruby says something which is a little strange in my opinion. She just says like, well, I do like Become Nahachi, but I don't have a favorite member, right? And she sort of says that, I mean, if I have to be brutally honest, all the initial members were kind of like meh. I'd probably jump up and down if it was Mei or Kyunpan though, right? So obviously saying that the other two members of Become Nahachi besides I that aren't Nino and the person Akane is playing, she would prefer them more, which, okay, that works, but it's just a little interesting. Which, I mean, I guess makes sense, but I figured if anything, she'd just be like, oh no, I is my favorite member. But, okay, that works. But at this point, Ruby's just like, hey, Sensei, were you aware of the relationship between Mama and Become Nahachi too, right? And she's just like, isn't that why you wrote the script like this? As the next thing we see is Nino, the real Nino, the current Nino, not the one played by Kana is what I'm trying to get across, is sitting outside, and she's just sitting there, and all of a sudden, Kana comes up beside her, and just like, hey, would you mind if I ask you some questions? And she's like, it'd be way easier to use what you say as reference for my acting, right? Being, yeah, I guess she's sort of a method actor, so getting to know somebody and get their personality in a way will really end up helping her in the end figure out how to act better as this person, right? That makes complete and total sense, right? But Nino stands here, or sits here, I'm sorry, and she's very silent. And eventually she finally speaks up and just says, is it something I must say? As Kana's just like, more like something that could help me study for my role. The girl who's playing Takamine-san! Oh my gosh, okay. The person Akane is playing is Takamine-san. It's Takamine-san, right? We finally got it, right? No more the character Akane is playing, it's Takamine-san. Let's go! Alright. But pretty much, Kana was saying what she was saying before. She's like, the person who's playing Takamine is known for being truly amazing at acting, right? And she's just like, I don't want to lose to her, right? As Nino sort of looks over and sort of has a realization. She's just like, hey, are you two, like, rivals? And Kana's just like, well, I mean, I guess we're something like that. But Nino's just like, oh, that's nice. Become Nahachi never had that problem because nobody could rival I. She's just like, thanks to her, we got more exposure, and we did our best in our own way, but it was very painful. As Kana sort of thinks back on her experience whenever all the auditions were going on, or whenever like Dig Deep was happening, for instance, and Ruby was in front of the screen, and everybody just had to sit as Ruby did her thing. And Kana's just like, oh, I understand. And I really do like this moment. Like I said, my thoughts on this chapter aren't really the best out there, because I don't really like the turn that this chapter takes. I mean, it makes sense. We'll get there eventually, right? But this is a very interesting moment. Sort of seeing how Nino wanted to have rivals and become a Hachi, how they all wanted to get better. But because I was such the best idol, she was like the prime idol, nobody could reach up to her and nobody could beat her. So that's a really interesting sentiment that, yeah, since nobody could beat her, what was the point at the end of the day for some of these characters? And I really do like how Connor sort of relates this back to, of course, Ai's daughter, Ruby, doing almost the same exact thing. It is a very interesting moment that I really do like for Maka Akasaka and Mingo Yorkie, right? But eventually Kana sort of just speaks up again. She's just like, did you hate Ai? As Nino's just like, well, Ai did her best in her own way too. And I mean, we all knew that for a fact. No matter how busy she was, she never complained and continued to work hard. I neither envied or was jealous of her, seeing that at the end of the day, like, they really had no outlook on Ai. Like, they all just sort of knew that she was doing her best, and this helped her get her off the streets in a way, but she was so much better than everybody, it sort of, like, equalized out the dial of, like, jealousy. So, it's also very interesting. But also, I'm not sure if this is a truth, as we obviously see by the end of this chapter. I mean, we know that she has pent-up resentment for Ai. We'll get there, right? But, oh, I'm sorry. I truly forgot what happened next in this chapter, right? We see that Nino then just sort of breaks down, just going, no, that's not true. Frankly speaking, I did hate her. I always wanted her to disappear. I even said go to hell to her face. Who'd have thought that she would have really died? And yet, that memory's still fresh in my mind, and I can never really forget it. Even when I used those violent words against her, I was still trying to love me. As we see that this sort of flashback happened in the past, we see just a panel of a young Nino who looks a lot like Kana, just with very different colored hair, is sort of standing there and is just yelling at Ai, and we sort of see that she's just like, hey, go to hell to her face. We get that implication, right? And as all of that's happening, we see Nino's just breaking down some more, just going, but Ai, as she just starts to cry, and like, Kana sort of just sitting beside her, sort of trying to calm her down, as all of a sudden, Ruby walks up. Of course, she's dressed as Ai, and she's just like, do you regret it? And Nino looks up and says, yeah. As Ruby sort of bends down and looks Nino in the face, and she's like, hey, it's all good. I don't care about that anymore, Nino-chan. As we sort of see here, and we see that now Ruby's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just kidding, right? As we see Nino just look into Ruby's eyes, right? And we can tell the despair that is on her face, right? As she just starts to laugh, and just laugh harder. And eventually, she just looks up, very demented, and just goes, you're totally different from her after all. The real Ai would never say something like that, right? And she's just like, instead, she'd be like, did you say that? Because that's what I wanted to hear. And as she gets up, she starts to walk away and just like, hey, my words couldn't hurt her. She wouldn't even remember them. She's the strongest, most invincible idol queen after all. And she just says, thank goodness you are a total fake. As she walks out and completely leaves the scene. And Kanazen is just like, oh my gosh, holy crap. She totally freaked me out. Her emotions were out all over the place. Like, that was crazy. Like, do I have to play that lady from now on? Like, oh my god, I don't think I can do it. But Ruby sort of stands here and looks down the hall where Nino left, right? And as we get to the final page of the chapter, we see that Nino is walking away And she's walking away. She's on her phone as she's walking through an alley. And she's on the phone and she just says, "Yes, she was very different. I was unique after all. There could never be a second I. Even so, I felt so relieved. We can't forgive anybody who surpasses I. Not even her daughter. Right, Hikaru Kameki-san?" Bump, 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 bump. Okay, so this is the big reveal for the chapter, is that, oh no. Nino is in leagues with Hikaru, the father of Aqua and Ruby, and a killing son of a bitch. They're in leagues with each other. So, I don't exactly like this twist. It does bring in stakes to the series, but there's no way I see Ruby dying, right? Granted, I'm pretty sure in terms of Oshinoko, Ruby is the main character, right? She was the first character who showed up on, like, the promo images for Oshinoko. And as much as this is Aqua's story, it is the sibling stories, right? And to be honest, while I do like Aqua more than Ruby, just I find Aqua funny as hell with how hard he tries to just be emo and everything, Ruby, I think, is the main character and the main focus of this series, right? And Aqua's sort of like a side character who is very fleshed out. That's how I'm going to put it, right? And to sort of just see that, oh no, it looks like Ruby's going to die. Because I know there was a lot of predictions that, oh, it's going to be Akane who Hikaru's going to get or something like that. And it's just very interesting to see this sort of turn of events happen, right? Of course, it does make sense. One of the old Become Nahachi members really hated Ai just because of how perfect Ai was, and because of that wants to get back at her, and the only way they can get back at her now is by killing her daughter, right? That makes perfect sense, and the one thing I don't really understand, though, about this chapter, I really get most of it, and I really like the interaction of, oh, Takamine-san is there, and also Nino's there, right, to supervise the acting and Kana sitting down. What just doesn't make any sense to me is why Ruby would come up to Nino and just play the whole thing of, oh, I'm going to forgive your sins here, right? And that just doesn't make really any sense to me, right? Yeah, and I mean, that's just really it. I didn't really like this chapter. I just don't like that twist at the end. And the way that Ruby's character is played in this chapter just doesn't really make sense, especially after her enlightenment with, oh my gosh, Aqua and a doctor are the same person, I can't believe it. So, was this a bad chapter of Oshinoko? No, it sets up a lot of things, and a lot of things that will be very important for the future. A little bit more of seeing the movie and the dynamic between the old Biko Nahachi, but overall, I wasn't really the biggest fan of this chapter. But with that said, thank you guys all for watching. This was my Oshinoko chapter number 132 review. Next chapter will be coming out on the 29th of November of 2023. As normal, I'll try to get the video out that day. I am actually getting a lot more free time in my life back again. I'm getting all of that time back I wasn't having for a while. So hopefully I should be able to be more consistent, but of course I can't promise really anything at all. But yeah, that's really all I got to say for this chapter. Thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy this, hopefully you won't mind liking the video, subscribing, all that stuff just really helps me out. And leave a comment. Did you guys like this chapter? Because you've heard my thoughts, and do you guys sort of think the same, or what's up there? But without further ado, this was Oshinoko chapter number 132, titled Nino. And next time I'll be back with Oshinoko chapter number 133. This will be Glowplasma231. Out.